Hey, I'm Joshua Harris. I am here to introduce the Happy Hippie Podcast with Jeremy and Bill.
It's good to have you with us. And, we just met, so I feel bad asking you such a ridiculous question. So I'm going to let Bill ask you the ridiculous thing on his mind.
Okay. Jeremy has this foolish delusion
That happens to be scripturally correct.
that Jesus is a suit-wearing corporate bozo. And I happen to believe that Jesus is a hippie. What do you think?
Well, he did have long hair. He wore sandals
But so did everyone else in the first
and
century.
wore a robe.
Yeah.
And he gave out free food. So that's a lot of hippie qualifications.
Yes.
See, I maintain.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but the free food.
Well, Bernie Sanders wears a suit and he gives out free food. So I suppose there is a little tension there between...
Every hippie I've met has been willing to consume free food. I don't know anyone that had free food left over to hand to anyone else.
That's the sharing principle, I think.
I think Bernie may be a hippie. It's just, he gave up when he couldn't keep his hair grown.
Yeah,
when it kept falling out.
All his funding requires him to wear a suit, but he'd probably rather wear shorts and a Hawaiian t-shirt or something. Right?
Exactly.
Josh, tell me a story. It can be from the Bible or your own life or anything else you want in between that kind of sums up or offers some insight into how you understand Jesus.
That is a great question. There are so many stories that could probably relate to that. But I'd say more recently, 5 years ago, I got really sick. I was in bed for 2 months, couldn't get out of bed, was in the hospital, found out I had Lyme disease and had had it for a long time. So during those 8 weeks of just lying in bed, that's all I did. I didn't go to work. I didn't go out, didn't do anything because I was too sick. It was a lot of contemplation time, that's for sure. And it started to take me down the path of what really is suffering. And, vacillating between the moments of being angry at God, which happens naturally as a human when things go poorly, right? And between the desire to commune with God more. I really started to see within Scripture, within what God was showing me, that the currency of communion with Christ is suffering. And so there was a new level of my understanding of a relationship with my Savior based on suffering. So not based on joy and victory and all the great things, but there was a deep level there of communion that I could only identify as I suffered.
Wow.
Thanks.
I think that may have been the most poignant answer we've gotten so far. That's awesome.
Well, thank you. I'll take
not that you suffered.
I'll take the blue ribbon.
Yeah. So you are the director of the Fresh2You Mobile Food Market. Is that correct?
Yes, that's fine. I stumbled on your names, so that's Fresh2You Mobile Food Market's a lot harder, that's for sure. So, I'm the director of a mobile food distribution nonprofit called Fresh2You.
What is Fresh2You and how did you get involved with it?
So how I got involved is kind of a long, intricate story that God just worked through some happenstance, quite honestly. But after I made connections with a church here in Little Rock called Mosaic, we started going through conversations about what it would look like for me to come and be part of what they were doing. And I was really interested in the nonprofit side of things, basically from like a learning standpoint. So they said, well, hey, a great way to learn is to do it. So why don't you come and take over this nonprofit? It's been sitting kind of unproductive for about 9 months. So they had initially started this program and then it just kind of sat. In other words, it wasn't moving forward. So they said, come here and run it. And it was really what we felt like God was prompting us to do. So we moved here and took it over.
Can you describe what the Fresh2You Food Market is and your mission?
Yeah, Fresh2You has a very specific mission on food health, and our target, if for lack of a better word, is food insecurity. And here in Little Rock, specifically, food deserts, so urban food deserts. Areas where grocery stores have either long since moved out of or are not going to be setting up shop in the several square miles of urban space in downtown. So it makes it difficult for a lot of people, elderly, handicapped, disabled, or just people in poverty to get out to where they can get fresh, specifically, that's why we got fresh in the name, fresh produce, fruits, vegetables, and things that they need to be healthy.
Yeah, and that's important. As someone who's worked more than one food pantry in my life, you might give people food, but it's not always like the healthiest options available.
Absolutely, and that's part of where we like to do something different to complement, what's already going on. So there's a lot of wonderful food pantry programs in the city, and for the most part, they are offering up the dry goods, the non-perishables, sometimes meat, but it is difficult to get fresh produce every week on a weekly basis, but we are striving to do that and to take the produce to the people. So different than the location where people have to come to, this is us being mobilized and taking it to them.
I was looking at your Facebook page and a couple magazine articles that were written on you here in Little Rock, and I was looking at the food on the bus. Mm-hmm. And I'll have to say, it looked better than when I get at the supermarket. So how do y'all get the food that you have? Because I know you're selling it at a discount.
Well, we used to.
Okay.
We used to. So what it originally started out as was like basically a minimal cost market. And then when I took it over, we felt like we might as well just do it for free. Because honestly, that food market strategy was not necessarily even breaking even. So since we were quote unquote in the red, we might as well be in the red and do it for free. So we switched the whole mission and what we do by just now our ideas, donors, supporters, and food sources that allow us to operate at such a low cost budget that we can just offer it for free. And then it really streamlines our process for sure.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe to our listeners, the folks at home,
Or in their car.
We'll let the people in the car listen too. But what y'all use for your mobile food your mobile food market, because I think it's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a journey for me. I've been directing this program for a little while now, and it's been, how do we continue to get more food sources? So we have pretty much a standard food bank opportunity, which we do. We have an account there, so we can get food from the food bank. But produce from the food bank is either old or not available. So we knew right away that we had to have other food sources. And so one of those is a great partnership with a local place called K. Hall and Sons. And the owner is a fantastic person and continues to give us good prices, but also even some donations because he believes in what we're doing. So I love that local aspect. And then we continue to try and find other local farms, local gardens that will want to glean or allow us to glean so that we can have food sources from them, specifically the produce, of course.
That's quite the adventure or the challenge to get enough food. How many people do you feed each week?
We are able to reach, right now, just going one day a week, we reach about 35 to 40 people in a location, and we do 2 locations on that day. So it works out to about 300 families a month.
That's cool.
By going once a week to 2 locations.
And
wow.
You just tell them take what they need, or?
Well, we have a system that we feel like works really well. It all goes together with what we believe is an important dignity aspect. So again, unique to us is that we don't want to be a mobile food distribution that goes out and just hands out food. We really want to be part of the community. We want to establish relationships. So it's really important to us that we don't feel like it's a handout. We want it to feel like it's an extension of community. So we're client choice. So that means, they come on the bus and it's like a grocery store. You guys have seen pictures. It's all set up, really nice. And they get to pick it out. But to help us in 2 ways, inventory, and they can only carry so much, we do have a number-based system. So quantities of what they can take. So as they go through, there's numbers that will say you can take up to X amount of this particular item.
Do you set that up based on the number of people in the household, or just this pretty much the same numbers for every?
Yeah, right now we just do it per person that's coming and taking. Because we're limited in space a little bit on the bus, and we're limited a little bit by budget of what we can afford, we don't necessarily pay too much attention to the household numbers right now. We do collect those numbers, so that gives us an ability to track it and figure out, okay, the areas that we're going to, are these mostly 1 or 2 people, or are these larger families? So as we go to each area and distribute it on a consistent basis, it allows us to figure out how many people is this one person trying to feed with what they're taking. Could
you talk a little bit about the bus and where the bus came from, and because that is a cool story.
Hippie Bill loves buses.
It is a really cool. You got to come, and I almost brought it with me today, just for fun, but you should definitely come check it out, climb on it, and you would enjoy it. So it is a really cool story. In fact, a lot of this program was initiated by the previous mayor of Little Rock. And he was, and still is, of course, as a person, a champion, along with a wonderful councilwoman named Kathy Webb, who has to be mentioned because without her, this program probably wouldn't have started. So she and the mayor kind of initiated what it would look like, and they essentially gave us a bus to use. The beautiful partnership is they still take care of the bus if it breaks. So we are grateful for that, because that's a logistic we don't have to handle. So their job is to be that kind of background support to make sure that we're functional. And then our job is to pass out the food and make the program succeed.
See, I may love buses, but you don't get this, Jeremy. This isn't a school bus. This is a city bus.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention that, but it is a city bus. Yeah. They took all the seats out of it, and we put shelves on it, and it's a cool looking grocery store on wheels.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen pictures, and Bill will add them to the show notes because he does all the work. You mentioned something earlier, you really care about the dignity of people that come through. Say a little bit about like what it is in your faith that makes you want to treat everyone with dignity, and then some of the ways you try to live that out.
Yeah, I think the dignity aspect is so central to even the way Jesus acted as he walked on our earth, right? And how he related to people. It was as though things were all one-on-one. He could be in a crowd, but he cared about the one. And not just that he forgave them. It wasn't always just a spiritual thing. It was a physical thing. He fed them. He healed their wounds. Physically, he was taking care of people. And a lot of those things, like the leprosy and the woman who was bleeding, those weren't just physical issues to them. They were dignity issues. They were things that made them considered unclean, or they couldn't be involved in worship, right? And so Jesus was addressing dignity on a central level in everything that he did. And so I love to be like-minded in that extension. So I don't want people to feel like I'm just giving them food because, hey, look at me, I'm the guy who's going to make, help you, and you're less fortunate. No, I want there to be a relationship. I want them to feel they have just as much dignity as I do. Even though they're receiving something for free, they're just as important and valuable as I am.
Do y'all do anything beyond the Fresh2You bus to develop those community relationships? Maybe picnics or whatever, so that you do develop those relationships?
Yeah, those are, great thoughts. And we are always trying to think, how do we go another step further? So some of that for us has been just food education. There's a program called Cooking Matters through Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance. So we've partnered with them. They've brought people out to just give some demonstrations. A lot of it, though, is just it's that relationship building. Every time we want to go back to the same places. So that's a key strategy for us, is go back to the same places regularly so we can develop those relationships. And that means we get to say, how are you doing? And how is your diabetes this week? And how is your sister? And every time we do that, that's building dignity on a relational level. So yeah, we can do other events and things that relate to them. But I think it's just the one-on-one time is what's so valuable to them.
As you've gotten to develop these relationships, are there any stories or people that you could share with us who have had their faith affected by being served or serving in the Fresh2You Mobile Food Market?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people are affected every week, even just from something as simple as the fact that they get to come on and feel dignified and respected and receive free food and healthy food, and we are there to help them have a good experience. And those people, I mean, it's always smiles. People are always smiling and saying thank you and God bless you. On a spiritual level, we want to always be sensitive to our partnerships and sensitive to what we're doing, that it's never about, hey, if you let us proselytize you or say something spiritual, then you'll get food.
Right.
Never would I want to do that, and I don't think it would be respectful to all of our partnerships as well. We want, in a sense, the generosity to do the initial talking and build that equity. But we are always hanging around and just saying, hey, what's going on in your life? Would you like prayer for something? I believe prayer is universal in the sense that you can't really offend somebody with prayer who is any part of a religion, because it could be, even Buddhists think of prayer as a positive thing, right? Or meditating. So we can say that, we can always talk about prayer. And we're in the South. People still like prayer. It's still the Bible Belt. So we see that as an opportunity just to listen to people's stories. So for instance, there's a lady at one of our locations. She just recently ended up in a wheelchair because of health complications, and that was very hard for her. And so she pulled me aside. I didn't, approach her. This wasn't me going around and saying things. She asked me. She said, hey, will you come over here and I want you to pray for me. So that was her. She initiated it, and she said, I'm just really struggling with depression because I'm in this wheelchair and I'm not able to get around. And she invited me into that space, and she cried and I cried and we prayed, and that's what she was seeking, right? So that because we're there, because we're legitimizing the relationship by being generous, it allows us to have an incredible opportunity in ministry.
Do you see that modeled in Jesus and how he walked on earth?
Absolutely, yeah. His toughest speeches were reserved for those who were religious by practice and felt like they didn't need him. But it was always those who were kind of the down and out. It didn't matter necessarily economically. There were some rich people who felt down and out, but there were also people in poverty who saw Jesus represented more than just, he wants something from me. Jesus actually represented, he has something for me. And so there was that welcoming nature to people, and I think Jesus definitely capitalized on that in every moment. Hey, here I am to serve you, and people invited him into that space.
How dependent are you guys on volunteers? Is it mostly a volunteer-run ministry, or is it those like yourself running most of this?
Yeah, well, technically I'm a volunteer. So at the moment, as we build the budget, I am just self-funded. So I do this whole thing for free, essentially. And so I have a team of about 6 other people that are volunteers. Some of them rotate on and off, but most of them are pretty consistent. And we need volunteers, that's for sure, because we have quite a lot of moving parts. What we want to do is have people who will help the families, showing up to sign in, because we do have USDA goods, we do have some of that assistance, and so there always has to be that record keeping. So we have people helping them with that. We have people talking to them and just saying, how are you doing? We have shopper helpers, so volunteers go with the people, and we take about 2 or 3 people onto the bus at a time. And so those 2 or 3 people will come on, and we'll have shopper helpers that are volunteers and hold bags for them and tell them what's there, because sometimes they say, what is this? And we say, hey, this is endive. It's a new kind of lettuce, or something you might have seen before. Or what, we're trying to educate them as well. Hey, don't forget to wash all these vegetables before you eat them. And so the shopper helpers are really key. And then myself and someone else is also available to take food into the buildings whenever needed. There's a lot of kind of shut-in people that are immobile. And what we do is we take them the forms, they can fill it out, and we tell them what we got on the bus, and we can shop for them and even take it kind of door to door.
Is there any particular produce that you guys get in that people just get excited about, like one particular piece of produce? We've got it this week,
If it's a vegetable, greens.
Greens, okay.
Greens. Greens are like money here in Little Rock, man.
Greens are good.
They are, and they want bushels and bushels of it. Fruit, probably the fruit they ask about all the time is grapes.
Okay.
Love grapes.
Have you got any stories about any weird vegetables you've gotten that had people give funny looks?
Yeah, we had this thing called I think it was like a chiote. I think that's what it was called. And it's a type of tumor like a potato, but it is green, and you're supposed to bake it, I guess, and stuff it with stuff. And we had that on the bus, and it looks kind of funny. It's like about the size of a softball, and it's green, and it has shape to it, so it's not smooth. It's got like ridges. People just had no idea what that was, and we tried to explain it, and we just said, take one and see, do what you want with it.
And you say that I have no idea what that is, or what I would do with it if I saw it in a store. Sorry, I'm going to tell you a story that I experienced. It was with one of the city council people through one of the Cooking Matters classes that brought fresh fruits and vegetables into our schools. And he told me the story of he took blueberries one day to an elementary school classroom. And they were all trying them, and they were like, oh, this is really good. And then the principal asked how many of you had blueberries before, and no one in the classroom raised their hand.
Wow.
No one in that classroom had ever experienced a blueberry before. And she looked at him, she's like, if you never do anything else for us, thank you.
Wow.
Have you got any?
No, that's incredible, because blueberries have antioxidants, and they can be good on a health level in so many ways. And I think that proves the point of why this is so necessary in a lot of urban areas, that food education or accessibility, both combined, it means that kids and families are growing up without a well-balanced, healthy diet.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Jeremy, there are a lot of people that think they've had blueberries and never had them before, because very few blueberry muffins actually have blueberries in them. They're like chunks of flavor with food coloring. So,
no, it is.
Yeah,
it's a real issue, and I've talked to grocery store people. And they're like, you could give me this stuff, but if people don't know like how to eat it or what to do with it, it's just going to go bad on my shelves. I can't stock it. So it is a real issue, and it's associated with economic class. I have reasons why, but
well, it's also just like a locational thing, right? So if you live in an urban area that doesn't have a lot of farming, or you're not going to the grocery store a lot, you're not going to see the variety of items that you would if you lived in a rural area with a lot of farms. And so you're getting fresh markets that are available.
That, and we excel at creating food deserts, especially in poverty-stricken areas. I'm sure most of our listeners, well, why don't you just get in a car and drive to where the groceries are? And it's just not that simple, is it?
No, it's not. I would say a good number of the people that we're able to serve, they don't have cars, and then they're maybe a senior citizen, or they're disabled, they're handicapped in some way. There's several blind, several missing limbs, several in wheelchairs, several have diabetes or other issues that make it very difficult for them to be mobile. So getting on a bus, taking an hour trip, round trip to go somewhere, the energy it takes, the effort it takes to get to a grocery store, it's not feasible for a lot of people. So they're relying on family members mostly.
Yeah, and even just getting a day or two's worth of groceries onto a bus to go back home has its own logistics there as well.
It is, which means they can kind of only shop for like a day at a time, right? So they're not doing these Costco runs where you get to buy a week's or 2 weeks worth of something like a lot of minivan moms do, right? And then bring it home. No, they're not able to do it at that large quantity.
And that does raise the cost of groceries too, making those daily runs.
It does, and their budget is so small that they can only buy a little bit at a time. They can't buy a lot at one time.
And fresh fruits and vegetables are relatively expensive.
They are. So to prove that point, through the hundreds of people that we have on our bus every month, very few of them take dry goods, take canned goods. Now, some of them take soup and things like that, but I would say a large number of them will come on the bus and will say, hey, first let's see, do you want any canned goods? And they'll say, I already got that. And they turn, and produce is what they're going to fill their bags with. Yes, fruits, vegetables, that's what they really come away with. That's what they get excited about.
Oh, yeah. You can just walk around the supermarket. If a carton of strawberries costs you $4,
yeah,
you can buy an entire You can buy 10 or 12 cans for that. I mean,
Yeah.
which one are you going to buy if you only have $5 to your name? You're going to buy all these cans because they might feed you for 3 or 4 days as opposed to a carton of strawberries.
And those cans are full of sugar and a bunch of additives that are just going to make the food, less healthy.
Yeah, we're transitioning to a cooking channel podcast now.
Yeah.
Well, I could talk about food health a lot, and a lot of that relates to my story earlier about me having Lyme disease, which is an autoimmune disease, and one of the biggest healing points for me has been diet. So I have learned a lot in 5 years about how important the fuel you put in your body is. So this is a great extension for me, this directing this program and reaching people. I get to share what it is that makes me so healthy and excited with people who need it equally as much.
As you move forward with the Fresh2You Mobile Food Market, what are your dreams for the future of this program?
Well, this year I read a stat that Feeding America did, or a survey that they did from last year, and they determined that 20% of this area, Little Rock, Pulaski County, 20% is food insecure. So when I read that number, for me, that was a reference point to say, what will it take in the next 3 years to decrease that number at least in half? What would it take? So that's, like dream proportion, right? What would it take to cut that number at least in half? And is it possible in 3 years? And so the dream is more funding, of course, allows us to feed more people. But not just monetary funding, but I think the partnerships are so important for us. Like I said, local farms and even people like Heifer, which is an amazing food, it's an amazing food program all over the world helping to feed hungry people. Making those partnerships, making those connections, other churches, church gardens, people that will rally around kind of that central cause. To me, that's the fun right now. That's the goal. The dream is to continue to develop those so that we can be out more than 1 day a week. We can reach more than we're reaching right now. And then the icing on the cake would be that we can inspire other cities and potentially see cities around the country want to do something similar and come to us, and we can help them launch a very similar program in another city.
That's really cool. That's a big dream. I'm just curious, are you into any of the gardening side of it?
I don't personally garden. I could. I enjoy a lot of what that is. My mom has done a gardening, education for me over the years. She grew up on a farm, and she has her own gardens. And but I personally don't at the moment. Yeah.
I know this is kind of insider baseball, I guess, but there is some efforts to start some community gardens in like that Fair Park neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's pretty close to your church. So, yeah, I was just wondering out loud, like what some of those projects or partnerships would look like, partnering with community gardens or local resources.
Yeah, what I'd love to do is be the outlet for those gardens, and say, hey, your expertise or your role on the team is the gardening, and we can just be your benevolent outlet. So as you source us, we get to give the food away, and you can come on the bus too, and we can do it together kind of as a joint team.
And that's what the body of Christ looks like as Paul describes it, right?
Yeah.
We each have our own part and our own role to play.
Absolutely.
We like to try to inspire people to make a difference in the world through these stories like yours.
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody in a local church, or even just somebody that's not even involved in the church? How can I help combat hunger in my local community? What could I do?
Yeah, I think there's this misnomer in our culture of, if I only had $1 million. But the question should be not, what would I do with $1 million? It should be, what will I do with the $10 I have or the $100 I have? And that allows us to see immediacy and opportunity. And it gives us a better scope. Because we tend to think, oh, what would I do if this? And we do those if statements. But for me, it's just, what's here right now? Where am I right now? Who do I know? How can I get involved? And I think you just start somewhere. I've said for many years, you just get your hands dirty. And then that's how you kind of get into something. That's how something grows. So to use the garden analogy, you got to get your hands dirty if you want to harvest. You don't say, if I had a harvest, what would I do with it? No, you say, first I'm going to plant, I'm going to sow, and then the harvest will come. I think if you want to do it on a large scale, so I guess to finish the first point, just do something. If everybody gives a little bit, then it's not one person that has to do a lot, right? So if you can feed one or two people, if you can reach out and feed one family, that's massive. That's making an impact. It doesn't have to be a whole city. Start with one family, make a difference. If you want to branch to the city level, I think making sure that you engage in conversations and partnerships with the city government and the city systems is really key. So our partnership with the city council and the mayor's office are, by and large, I would say, what helps us to be successful. And we are incredibly grateful for that favor that they give us and the opportunity that they give us to continue to grow. So getting connected in the actual city system will be really vital down the road for you to reach more and more people and make some kind of systemic change.
We're in Arkansas, let's be honest. Every fourth person has a vegetable garden. And I have never met anybody with a vegetable garden that did not have an overabundance of vegetables. Maybe finding your local food pantry and taking those fresh vegetables there makes a huge difference.
That's that important principle of gleaning, which is you don't use all of your harvest. You make sure that you leave some for the poor and for the needy and for those in your community.
I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably in the Bible, but even more so, I think, historically, anthropologically, that was an ancient Near Eastern practice by and large.
It certainly appears Deuteronomy, Leviticus, again and again and again, this idea of, only beat your olive trees once. Don't.
Yeah. That piece
don't clean up behind.
Yeah, that piece of generosity is so important in a society that's so materialistic, and man, we fall for greed too much, as though that is going to make us happy or satisfied. In reality, it's the opposite. As we give and as we're generous and take care of other people, that's where joy is really found.
And science confirms that as well. Studies show the more you give, the happier you are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've seen that study before, and it is hopefully something that just reminds people this is not purely a spiritual thing. It is a holistic thing.
Yeah. It's a human thing.
Yeah.
How has working the mobile food pantry, how has it shaped your faith?
It's good. That's a great question, because I think anytime we do something like this, anytime we want to be generous, anytime we want to serve, we should always be cognizant of what it does to us and be thinking and asking those questions. Yeah, how does this shape me? How does it grow me? One of the ways that is so important for me is perspective. It's kind of like, if I don't watch the world news, I don't know what's going on in the world. If I'm not serving in my city, I don't know what's going on in my city. If I'm not being generous and helping my neighbor, which is, I think by definition, not proximity. Neighbor is more about people who are not like us. Neighbor is anyone and everyone, right? So if I'm not serving those people and being actively involved in their lives, I won't know them. I won't know anything about my world around me and my people in my city and my neighborhood. I'll only know me. And for me, I don't want to have such a small experience. I don't want to have such a limited life. I love how this opportunity continues to shape me and grow me because of all the people that I get to meet and serve and be part of their life.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about the story you told earlier about the woman who pulled you aside and wanted you to pray, and she cried and I cried. And
yeah.
Not everybody would be comfortable can picture themselves like crying with a person that they sort of know, And I was wondering, is that like a byproduct of serving, or was it your faith that motivated you to kind of serve and led to that?
Yeah, well, I think there's so much backstory to it that, just in brief, I didn't grow up in America. I grew up in another country. My parents were missionaries. Since graduating college, I've built homes and done a lot of nonprofit and generosity work around the world. So I've done a lot of trips to places other than America and worked in a lot of slums and with kids. And So for me, it's just kind of a continuation. You know, it's a piece by piece. God puts these things together in my heart and continues to give me a love, and like an actual love, like a deep appreciation kind of love for other people. So for me, that's like oxygen. You know, serving people, being able to make a difference in their life, that's truly the oxygen of my life. And I wouldn't be the same if I just sat at home or if I didn't do it.
Yeah, and that's been part of your faith and your understanding of faith from a young age.
Yeah, it really has. It's kind of all built, you know. And there was a season where I wanted to live for myself, and it was just so empty. It really was. So I'm glad that God pulled me back into this arena of giving is truly where I get the most.
You obviously love this. So what would it take to be able to take this ministry, this program, from a 1 day a week program to a two day a week program?
So great question. And you know, it would take more food. So that would mean double the food source, and it would take more money, so gas and all the expenses we have buying food. So it would take us from what is now, which is a pretty meager $2,000 a month budget. So if you do the numbers, we're feeding a family 3 to 4 days worth of groceries for $7. That's pretty incredible. That's good. Yeah. So we've managed to find our way, you know, slowly but surely into a very efficient progress. So we spend about $2,000 a month now. If we were to go to $4,000 a month, then we would double. So that would allow us to go 2 days a week, feed 600 plus families groceries, and that would be incredible.
See, our 10 listeners, if you guys would just all send $200, you could move this from a 1 day a week ministry to a 2 day a week ministry. All 10 of you.
Well, first, Bill, that means your mom and your dad both have to send checks.
Yes.
Well, I think the beauty of it is, you know, it's like everyone here and there. It's like $25 here, right, and $25 in there. But I gave you those numbers on purpose because for somebody, let's say, that gives $70, that's feeding 10 families. That stat right there, I think, should motivate people, right, to say, wow, my investment is so small compared to how much it does. It makes me think of God. It's like what God gives us, you know, for him is small. But it's huge. It's everything for us. So sometimes in these circumstances, man, if you gave $70, that would be small, probably, in your mind. But to 10 families, that would be huge.
That's a huge return on your investment. And
yeah.
Just amazing.
Yeah.
That's
and
crazy. Fresh fruits and vegetables.
I know. And meat and dairy. So
you do meat and dairy, too?
We do. We have coolers on our bus. So we have fruit, vegetables, meat, and dairy, and then some dry goods. So they're coming away with milk, they're coming away with chicken, beef, something that they're getting a whole meal, right? Yeah. So that's our goal, is we want them to be able to have the ingredients to make at least 2 days worth of meals. And then they can have leftovers or such.
Yeah, I mean, then you're doing some things through Cooking Matters to teach them how to cook those meals or how to put them together in a healthier way.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, you know, it's not just about giving them food, it's about increasing their health. You know, we have people all the time that are complaining about the aches and the pains and the ailments and the going to the doctor. And through my personal experience and through my study and my research in my own life, it's amazing how many doctor's visits you could eliminate if you had fresh and healthy food on a consistent basis.
Most food deserts, they're going to go to a convenience store or something like that to get their food. And if you go, I challenge anybody, go out to a convenience store, look at what they have on the shelves, and tell me you can maintain a healthy life with that.
Yeah, how are you going to avoid bad blood pressure and bad cholesterol and bad liver function? Yeah, there's no way to avoid those things on that kind of diet.
Right.
Yeah. Which seems counterintuitive to people, but my experience is most people are doing the best they can with what they have and what knowledge they have. So if you can change their tools and their resources, then you give people a chance to do better for themselves. And my experience is most people want to do better for themselves.
Exactly. To your point, you know, some people might think, well, if people are used to eating processed stuff and convenient stuff, why, you know, what are they going to do with vegetables and fruit? They want it. They really do. We don't have anybody come on there and say, oh, that stuff's gross, I'm not going to eat that. We have people come on there and fill their bags with it as much as we allow them to take, because there's still that innate, education somewhere in there that was instilled in them that fruits and vegetables are really good.
Cooking Matters, Jeremy, teaches people to make the food in a healthy way. They also teach you to make it in a tasty way too.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic program, and at some point we need to get somebody from there on our show, as long as we're doing these food-based programs.
Apparently.
Yeah.
We'll try out for our own cooking channel network next week.
Yeah, if you guys haven't really talked to anybody from Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance, there's some phenomenal leaders in that program, and they're doing amazing things.
Bill's manager, you're our third podcast of the day. We kind of record them in blocks. And the first person did like a homeless feeding ministry.
Yeah.
And the second person had a community meal in Jacksonville. So it's all food-based today, apparently.
Nice. Yeah. Well, what makes us unique is we have a bus and we put food on it, and it's a grocery store, and we take it to wherever people need it the most. And I don't know if you guys even knew this by looking at our social media, but part of our partnership with the city is, we're there to serve. So they reached out to us in January and said, hey, would you take the bus and some groceries and feed federal employees at the airport? Because during the government shutdown, all those federal families were not getting their checks. So we did. We took the bus out twice, parked it right at the airport, and all the federal employees came out, got groceries. So that was another beautiful extension of what we're able to do.
Is there something in your faith or your theology, this idea of we're going to take it to them instead of they should come to us to get it?
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to get into like a ecclesiology, like church kind of conversation, but I think that's part of where the church could improve. I think that's part of where the church as a whole is just missing a large slice of the pie, right? If we want to say it that way. It's when you say, let's do something great here in this building and then try and bring people to it and hope they come, you're just limiting yourself. But if you say, hey, we've got an opportunity and there are people who could use what we have, let's go to them, I think you're able to reach so many more people. So that is part of it. But part of it, too, is that kind of missionary mindset, that I grew up with, which is just go to where the need is. That's what I think Scripture teaches is the word go, right?
Go.
It says G-O. It doesn't say S-T-A-Y. It says G-O. So go to where the need is.
Yeah, we've kind of, in Christianity, going, they're supposed to go to us.
Yeah.
If we build it, they will come. But instead, Jesus sends us out.
Yeah, they're not coming as much as we think they are.
Exactly. Yeah. Joshua, we've been asking this question recently as we wrap up our shows. What is it that is saving your soul right now? Or what is it that's feeding your soul right now?
What is it that's feeding my soul? I think everything I talked about, this whole program, the opportunity that I get to be the director of it is something that I'm humbled by. The favor that God has given us in such a short amount of time to be on the news and in the paper and feeding the airport. And what feeds my soul is not any of that, not any kind of publicity or that, but what feeds my soul is the woman who wants me to pray for her depression, the man who wants me to pray over his emphysema, the woman who wants me to pray for her sister who's incarcerated. What feeds my soul is not even that I'm praying. What feeds my soul is that there's somebody that is not like me, doesn't look like me, and we don't know each other very well, but they invite me into their life. On a street, on a corner, on the grass, on the sidewalk, they invite me into a piece of their life, and they allow me to be hope, they allow me to be encouragement, and they allow me to say something, and we have a connection.
It occurs to me that we say a lot that all of us have sacred worth. Every human has sacred worth.
Yeah.
When you treat other people like they have sacred worth, it changes your life and theirs.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
Well, if people want to find out more about Fresh2You or donate or volunteer, how can they do that?
Greatest way would be to go to our website. So we are part of a group of nonprofits called Vine and Village, just like the words vine on a tree and a village. So Vine, the word A-N-D, village.org. But you can also find us on Facebook, which is a great thing. and it's Fresh2, the number 2, U LR for Little Rock.
All right.
Same thing as on Instagram, Fresh2You Little Rock.
All right, and we'll add that to our show notes so that people
Awesome.
can find you easy. Thank you so much for taking some time out today to talk with us.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was so enjoyable. We could talk for hours, right?
Yes,
Probably about something.
About something. Good stuff. Thank you guys.
Thanks, man. It's awesome.